Hey, what is going on everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and as you can see, we're back over here at the Xbox 360 because we have been covering something that's been pretty exciting here. But this time around, although I've covered this a couple of times, we are going to be doing this more like a starter tutorial fashion because although this is still maturing and there is still progress being made, we have gotten some pretty awesome breakthroughs here. For those who do not know, this here is a software-only hypervisor exploit which allows the Xbox 360 to run unsigned code such as emulators without soldering anything, without installing a glitch chip, without doing anything that even involves taking apart the Xbox itself, but a new development has now allowed us to run this only using a USB drive. For those who might be a little bit confused by it or you're not aware of this here is Bad Update, which is a development that has been released by developer Grimdoomer here. It states here this is a software-only hypervisor exploit for the Xbox 360, and you can see here that this works up to dashboard 17559, which at the time of recording is the latest available dashboard. Now, previously, at the times I've covered this, it did require an Xbox 360 copy of Tony Hawk's American Wasteland, and I have covered this a couple times. However, with the most recent development, you can now do the same thing with the Trial of Rock Band Blitz, which means two awesome things. One, you no longer need to purchase a game disc for this, and two, you can do everything only using a USB drive and your console. This latest entry point for the game Rock Band Blitz is all possible thanks to the DAT arrest exploit by I Hate Compver and Emma, otherwise known as Invoxy Play Games. Now, running this here is a tiny bit different compared to Tony Hawk. However, we're going to be able to get this up and running, and again, you're no longer going to need to use a game disc at this point, and I'm sure there will be more games that will be discovered as entry points here, but at this moment, really all you need is a USB drive, and you just need to put the files in a few places, and I'll show you how to do everything in this video here. And before we get fully into the prerequisites here, I just want to share that this exploit is not persistent, so this means that every time you turn on your system, you are going to have to run this, and it will only work as long as your system is on. If you turn it off, if it crashes, anything like that, you have to rerun this exploit. It can also take quite a bit of time. Each run might take up to 20 minutes, and you're probably going to have to do this multiple times. Finally, this is not a soft mod, so this does allow us to run some unsigned code and such on here, and you could see everything in the FAQ, but this itself is not a soft mod. Now, diving into this process here, we're going to need a few things. First of all, you are going to need your Xbox 360 up and running and working. It does not need to be modified in any way, shape, or form. This is a completely unopened, untouched system that I am working on here. It's just been played like a standard system. Secondly, you're also going to need a USB drive on hand because we're going to need that to copy some necessary files to and from our computer and from our Xbox. Now, the last recommendation I have on here is whichever system you're doing this on, I would recommend keeping it offline once we start this process. By that, I mean if you try this, you run some homebrew, and then you go onto Xbox Live, that's going to have a higher ban risk on there, so just to keep it safe, I would recommend you now keep this system that you're going to run this on offline. With all that being said, let's go ahead and get started on here. Now, the first thing that would be good to do is get our dashboard updated to 17559. In order to do that and check which dashboard you're on, you can go all the way to Settings, go into System, go into console settings, and at the bottom here with system info, look at your dashboard. Now, I've already updated the system, but I'll go ahead and put in some footage showing how to update this, which is not all too difficult. You're going to want to take your USB flash drive, plug it in, go back, go into storage, and from here, you're going to want to find your USB drive. If it's already been set up before and it's compatible, it should look something like this. If it shows as unrecognized, you're going to have to tap the A button, or if it's like this, tap the Y button, and what we're going to do is format the drive. Keep in mind, this is going to destroy all the data on the drive, so if there's anything that you care about, you're going to want to back it up now. But you're going to come over to Format, say yes, and go ahead and give it a few seconds to format. And there we go, and now with the format completed, we can go ahead and X out of here. We're now going to remove our USB drive from the system. Let's go ahead and move over to the computer and get the dashboard update. I'm going to have this Digix thread linked down below in the description of this video here, and all you need to do is come down here and click on Download Xbox 360 System Update 17559. I'm linking this one here in particular because in the future, in case there's a dashboard update which ends up patching this here, you won't be able to get the latest download that is compatible from the the Xbox site itself, so I'm going to just link this direct system update here so you all can download this really at any time. Go ahead, save it somewhere you can easily find it. Once you have it downloaded here, you should see the system update 17559 usb.zip. You can go ahead, right click the zip file and use something such as 7-zip to extract it into its own folder. And we now have a folder corresponding with this, which is just the system update itself. Inside of here, you're going to see one folder called cache system update. And what you'll need to do is right click and copy this out. Now go over to your USB drive and we're going to paste it in here. One thing to keep in mind though is that some older dashboards have a different style of formatting the USB drive, so you might come over here and see that your USB drive is already full. It does have to be in FAT32 format, and in case it is full and you can't copy anything to it, well, you're going to have to format it a second time on your computer here. You can just right click, go to format, make sure FAT32 is selected, click on start, OK, give it a few seconds and it's been copied over. Now hit close, and you can go into your USB drive either way, right click and paste it to the root of your USB drive. It should take a few seconds to copy everything over, but once that's done, as you can see, it's in there, and that's all we need. We can now exit out of here, right click, eject our USB drive, and take it back over to the console. Back over at the console, go ahead, plug in your USB drive at the dashboard here, and after a few seconds, once it's recognized, you should see an update prompt like this. To any of these update prompts, you're going to just want to say yes. It's then going to go through the update process and update the actual dashboard or kernel itself on your console, and then reboot the system. Just wait for this to complete. Now, once your system reboots, it's going to do another extract here, in which it's just going to take all the avatar data from that update and copy it over to your internal storage on your system. Just wait a few more moments for that to complete. Now, once the dashboard is accessible after that extraction, you can navigate all the way over to settings, go into system, go to console settings, and if you check system info, check it out, you should now be at dashboard 17559. Again, this is where we need to be, this is what would be recommended, and it would be best recommended to keep the system offline at this point. Now again, if you're coming from an older dashboard that has that older style USB formatting, well, we can actually format the USB drive again now on the latest dashboard, so we make sure we have the newer standard on here. Go down to storage, find your USB drive, tap the Y button, and go ahead and format this. It's going to destroy the data, of course, but all we have is that system update on here. So we'll have a nice clean USB drive to work with. At this point, we are good to go. So now go ahead, unplug your USB drive, plug it into your computer, and we're going to work on the downloads for bad update. So now just download all of these one by one, but the first thing you're going to want to download is the Xbox 360 bad update latest release here. Over from the GitHub page here, I would recommend giving this a read, and another thing, you can even go to the wiki here as well and go through all of the instructions here if you want to. Just give them a quick read over really how this works, how to use it, and just the different entry points on here. There is a lot of great information here on this wiki, and there's not too many pages, so I would recommend giving this a good once over. However, we can go back to the main repo itself, click on releases, and from here, you're going to want to download a couple of files. You're going to download the Xbox 360 Bad Update Retail USB zip file. Whichever the latest one is, just go ahead, download it, and save it somewhere you can easily find it. And you're also going to want to download this tools.zip. The second piece of software here we're going to be downloading is from Invoxy Play Games, and this here is a replacement payload essentially that we can drop into Bad Update. This here is FreeMyXE, which is short for Free My Xenon. Again here, it does states this is not a soft mod or a custom firmware and all patches are temporary, but this states that it applies freedom unlocking patches to the kernel and hypervisor. Some of the features are that it allows us to get the CPU key, it allows for some unsigned homebrew, it lets the homebrew access hypervisor and CPU key, and of course you're able to launch more homebrew here. So this is pretty nice. There's also this pretty cool feature here which was baked in, which is a USB-D sec patch or similar to it. Emma ended up giving me a little bit of a shout right there, but I'll talk about that near the end of the video here. However, to download this, you're going to come over to Releases, and then download the latest version of Free My Xenon. Just download and save this zip somewhere you can easily find it. Now here's where it gets good. We are going to need to download a demo or a trial of an Xbox Live Arcade game. And the Xbox Live Arcade game, which is now working for this, is Rock Band Blitz. I'm going to have this linked down below in the description, but you can come down here and click on Download Rock Band Blitz and save it somewhere you can easily find it. In order to navigate our homebrew and file structure and such, it would be recommended to have something such as XEX menu just to be able to jump in and out of a file manager. You can come over to this thread, also linked down below in the description, and the one that we're going to download is going to be XEX menu 1.1 live/XEX. Again, just download this and save it somewhere you can easily find it. Now, after running XEXmenu, one of the first pieces of Homebrew I recommend running is something such as Simple 360 NAND Flasher in order to back up our NAND and keep it somewhere safe. Go ahead and click the download right here, and again, save it somewhere you can easily find it. Now, that's been quite a nice handful of archive files here, and if you have any trouble extracting them out, download 7-zip, install it, and that should hopefully get you sorted. So here we go. Once we get all those downloads completed, we no longer need the dashboard update, but you should have your bad update download, the tools for it, Free My Xenon, XEXmenu, the Rock Band trial, as well as Simple 360 NAND Flasher. What you can do is highlight all of these, right click, and use something such as 7-zip to extract them into their own folders. With everything extracted, you should have 6 folders here, and at this point we no longer need the archives, so you can either delete them out or move them, whatever you're wanting to do. But let's go ahead and get rid of those and just focus on our folders. Now that we're here, we're mostly going to be doing copying and pasting, but I'm also going to show you some patching as well too. So for this, you just need to go into your USB drive, and the first thing we're going to need is bad update. Go ahead and double click this folder, and inside of here you're going to see a few folders. It's going to correspond with whichever exploit game you're going to be using, and of course for this we're going to use Rock Band Blitz. Go ahead, double click the corresponding game folder, grab any of the contents that are in here, right click, copy these out, let's close out of here, and in the root of your USB drive, you're going to want to right click and paste. And if there's any files or folders that require you to overwrite, go ahead and say yes. Now the second thing we're going to need is Free My Xenon. Go ahead, double click this, and you're going to find a text file here, which you can go ahead, give a quick read. And once you get this all here, we can close out of this, and the thing that we need to focus on is freemyxenon.executable. Just go ahead, right click this, copy it out, close out of here, and inside of our USB drive itself, we need to go into there, go to the bad update payload folder, find the default.xex file, and delete it out. Now once that's been deleted, right click and paste your Free My Xenon executable in here, but we're now going to rename this, so right click, rename, and call it default, just like that. So there we go, we now have Free My Xenon baked in here. We'll also need to set up Rock Band Blitz, so since we have our entry point, go ahead, double click the Rock Band Blitz trial folder, and you should see a content folder right here. We can go to the content folder, go into the zeros folder, and once you see this folder here, 5841122D, right click and copy this out. Now close out of here, and on your USB drive itself, we're going to go in here. If you're on Windows, click on View, Show, make sure hidden items and file name extensions are active. Now we can go into the content folder, the zeros folder, and right here you should see a folder for Rock Band Blitz, but you can right click and paste this in here. And if it asks you to merge anything, you're going to want to merge your files, folders, or directories. With that copied over, don't worry, we're getting pretty close to the end here. We can go ahead and grab XEXmenu 1.1, and there's going to be a couple of archives in here, one for the live version and one for the XEX version. We want the live version, so you can right click this live archive, click on 7-zip, and extract it into its own folder. Once you see the XEXmenu 1.1 live folder, double click in there and find the code 999 folder. Right click and copy this out. Now exit out of here, and in our USB drive, again, we need to go into that content folder, the zeros folder, and next to our Rock Band folder here, we're going to right click and paste in XEXmenu. So for our final piece of Homebrew here, this is where I'm going to show you the patching operations that are required. You can go into Simple 360 NAND Flasher, go into that folder yet again, and you're going to need to do this for any type of executable you want to run. I haven't had any luck trying to run extracted disk-based backups. However, if you're running any type of Homebrew, such as a XEX version of XEXmenu or Aurora, Simple 360 NAND Flasher, or even an emulator such as SNES 360, you're going to have to do this for every single executable that you run. Whichever Homebrew that you've downloaded that you're getting ready to run, go ahead, grab the executable, whether it's default or aurora.xex or whatever it's called. You're going to want to right click the executable, copy, and paste it out. And we're going to call this one the original version. So we can rename this, and let's call it default.xex.orig, something like that. Again, it helps here if you're within Windows, go to View, Show, and make sure file name extensions are visible. So now we need to take the executable that we need to modify slightly, right click, cut it out, go into the Tools folder, and within Tools, you should see XE Patcher. Go into the XE Patcher folder, and right click and paste whichever executables you're wanting to modify. Now we're going to need to patch this through Exectool. Do not double click the executable because that's not how it's going to work, but what you can do is you can go over to the address bar right here, and within the address bar just replace this with CMD and hit the enter key. It should now open up command prompt, and this is the exact command that we're going to need to run. It's going to be exectool.exe space -m space R space -R space A space, and now type in the name of your executable file. You can see mine is default.xex, but whichever executable you're needing to modify here, you're going to need to type in that name. If you want to make it a little more simple, you can type in something like DE and then hit the tab key on your keyboard and it'll auto-complete it. Now hit the enter key, and what it's going to do is it's going to remove any limitations on that executable, and then it's going to make sure that it is encrypted to retail, because you still can only run retail executables. You cannot run development executables, for example. So I've done this here for one piece of Homebrew, but remember, for any piece of Homebrew that you're running, you have to do this to the executable. Even if it's a bit redundant, if it's already been done, just do it just in case. With that completed, we can close out of command prompt. Now we can grab our modified default executable, right click, cut it out, X'd out of here, and paste it back into our Simple360 NAND flasher folder. Now for our final file copy, we need to grab that Simple360 NAND flasher folder, right click, copy, go to our USB drive, and we can create a new folder in here and call it something like apps. Inside of the apps folder, right click and paste. And to avoid a little bit of redundancy, go ahead, go into your Homebrew folder, and you can delete the original executable there, because this is the one that we're going to be launching. Now I copied over a few other applications here I've previously been able to patch and run, and we're going to run through each of these here just to show you that they are working. However, again, before you copy any Homebrew over, you are going to need to modify the executable using Exectool using the previous instructions that I showed. But once everything has been copied over here, we can go ahead, go over to our USB drive, right click, eject it, and once it's been ejected, go ahead and move it back over to the console. Back over at the console, go ahead, plug your USB drive in, you can go to system, go to storage, and make sure that it is showing up. Now there's a few things that we need to look out for. First of all, let's go ahead and create a profile real quick. In order to do this, you can bring up the guide, go down to create profile, and this is going to be a offline only profile, and you should only be using this for your Homebrew and such on here. So I'm going to save this to the USB drive since everything is on there. You can hit the A button, and I'd recommend calling this something such as bad update, just so you know what it's going to be for. Once you name it whatever you want to on here, let it sign in. We can pick any type of avatar, so the default one is fine. You can hit done on here, and I'd recommend if you really think you're going to be using Homebrew kind of often on here, you can go to your profile, go down to sign in preferences, and turn auto sign in on for this profile. Now the next thing we need to do is if you've ever played any Rock Band games on here, we need to remove the content from this system. You can go to system settings, storage, and in my case I'm going to go to my hard drive, go into games and apps, and I'm going to come down and look for Rock Band. And here we go. So as you can see, I have some Rock Band DLC here, and the thing is, when we run this, at the time of running the exploit, we cannot have any Rock Band content on the system at all. So you can either move it to another USB drive, or you can move it to this current USB drive and we can back it up to our computer. If you're going to do that, I'll show you. You can just highlight any of these games, hit the Y button, go down to move, and then select your USB drive and let it move over. I'm now going to do this for the other two. Now once that's all been moved over, bring up the guide, hit X to sign out, say yes, and now unplug your USB drive if you need to back up any of that content. Over at our computer, we can go to the USB drive, go into the content folder, which again is a hidden folder. Inside of here, go to the zeros folder, and if you don't know the game ID, it can help to go according to date modified on the timestamp itself. You can see here when the Xbox 360 is offline, this is the default date, so I know that these three folders are my Rock Band folders. But even if you still need further confirmation, you can go into any of the folders, and any of these folders here, which have a 0000002 folder, that means that that is downloadable content. So you're going to just want to grab any of these, right click, cut. You can create a folder like this, like Rock Band Content Backup, and right click and paste it in here. So there we go, everything is going to transfer. With this now backed up on our computer and off of our console completely here, we can right click, eject, and go back to the system itself. One of the last gotchas to look out for is when you plug your USB drive in, you only want one USB drive plugged into your system. So having a hard drive or an internal storage is fine, but for a USB storage device like this, you only want one connected, which is going to be the one which has bad update applied to it. So with that said, we can exit out of here, go back to the dashboard, and for this, I'm going to sign into my bad update profile. We can exit out of that. This will be the last time I warn about this here before we run it, but I would highly recommend keeping your system offline. So that means you can go over to your settings, go to network settings, and make sure your wired network has been disconnected if you have one connected, or if you're connected to a Wi-Fi network, you're going to want to disconnect and forget that Wi-Fi network. However, I would say that's enough prep work at this point. We can now go ahead and try this out for ourselves. In order to do this, go over to your games section, go into My Games, and the game that we're going to be looking for is Rock Band Blitz. You can find this and tap the A button to launch it. And here we go. Once we're at the start screen, I recommend wait about 5 or 10 seconds, then press the A button to start. It's going to bring this up and go down to your USB storage device for a device selected, press A, and now it's going to tell you running exploit. At this point, now what you need to do is keep a timer, keep a stopwatch, bring out your clock app on your phone, have an old school alarm clock, and set an alarm for 20 minutes from now. I'm not kidding when I say that. You're going to need to keep this running for 20 minutes. Now, the downside to this, especially compared to something such as RGH, is that not only this can take 20 minutes per run, but this could take several attempts here. So what you're going to need to do is, again, like I said, set your alarm for 20 minutes and just wait. And if at the end of that 20 minutes it does not launch, you're going to have to turn off your system, turn it back on, boot up Rock Band Blitz yet again, and go through the process to run this and set another 20-minute timer. And if it still doesn't work, you're going to have to try again until it ends up working. Now, if you're curious as to why it takes so long here, I did cover this in Mod Chat 131, where I went over the bad update exploit and release here, and I ended up going through a breakdown of the write-ups and just went into the technical aspect of it before showing how to run it. So if you're interested in that aspect, I'll have that video linked down below in the description. And for how long bad update can take to run, by the time you're done watching that Mod Chat episode, your exploit might have run at this point. Now, another thing you can pay attention to is the console itself, and look at the front LEDs on it. When you're first running this, you should have the first LED quadrant lit up, and when you start running the exploit, the second quadrant should light up, followed by the third one here, which means that we are now entering stage 3, which is good. And then when the LEDs start kind of flipping and doing something like this, that means that stage 3 is running, which is good. That's exactly what we want. However, one nice benefit here using Rock Band Blitz compared to the previous Tony Hawk's American Wasteland is that the game isn't necessarily frozen. So not only you can see on the video here that the background is moving, but if you turn up the volume on your TV, there's also music playing in the background. And if at any point either the image freezes or the music stops, then that means the exploit has failed. And instead of waiting for 20 minutes to pass, you can turn off the system, turn it back on, and try again. So that's really all it is at this point. It's now a waiting process. So all we have to do is wait. Now, once this has successfully completed, you should see a screen like this thanks to Free My Xenon. And I will say here, this ended up taking 3 attempts for me to get, and I'd say it took probably about 45 minutes or so. Again, I'm not kidding with those wait times here. However, once you're at this point, it will tell you about to start patching Hypervisor and kernel. It gives you the CPU key, and if you want to, you can write it down or take a photo, but we're going to be getting it thanks to Simple 360 NAND Flasher. All you need to do is take your controller, hit OK, and now it's going to tell you that the hypervisor and kernel have been patched. So a big thank you to Invoxy Play Games for this here. We can now hit yay, and at this point we're now ready to have our fun. So it should kick us back to the dashboard here, and at this point if you go over to your games, go to My Games, go all the way to the end, launch XEX menu, and if you wait a few moments, check this out, XEX menu is up and running and working. Would you look at that? Beautiful right there. So this might be your first piece of homebrew that you have run on your system, which congratulations, you've now gotten to this point. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is that your system is going to be in this somewhat modified state here in which you can run homebrew while it is on. But if something happens, like you turn off your system or you run a program and it crashes your system and you need to reboot it, you need to go through and launch Rock Band Blitz yet again and run through the process in order to get to this modified state. However, if you want to navigate what's on your USB drive, it is a little bit odd navigating XEX menu, but you can tap the LB or RB button. I'm going to actually tap the RB button until you get to USB 0. And you should see it right here. Even if we cycle through, we can see the configuration, games, but USB 0 is what we're looking for. And if you hit left and right on the D-pad, you can go to the flash, your hard drive compatibility partition, your regular hard drive right here, maybe any other storage you might have if you have like an internal memory unit. However, this is where we can use it as a springboard. So for example, if we want to dump the NAND, which I definitely recommend doing here, go into Apps, go down to Simple 360 NAND Flasher, and launch the executable. Now wait a few seconds here, and as you can see, it ends up printing all of this, and now it gives us our CPU key, which thankfully that's due to free my Xenon. We really only have one option here, which is to dump the NAND, so tap the X button here, and now wait. It's now going to dump out not only the CPU key, but also your NAND onto your USB drive. This is going to be really important because in case anything happens, if you mess up your NAND in any way going forward, as long as you're willing to open up your system and hook up a hardware flasher to it, you can always restore from this NAND. A lot of people have also asked if they can write their NAND here. I will say at this time, it is not going to be recommended at all. If you try and patch your NAND or do anything with that, you might be able to patch and flash your NAND successfully, but when you reboot the system, it is going to give you the red ring of death. So just keep that in mind. We still want our system to work and operate properly. But now that the NAND has been dumped, we can now press any key to exit and wait a few moments. Now that we're back over at the dashboard, one thing I'd recommend is backing up that NAND to a safe place. So what we can do is bring up the guide, go ahead, sign out, and now physically unplug your USB drive and go over to your computer. When you have your USB drive plugged in, go to your drive, go into the apps folder, go to Simple 360 NAND Flasher, and you're going to find a CPU key.txt and a flashdump.bin. These are going to be really important for your specific system, and they are keyed per console. So what's best to be done here would be to grab the flashdump.bin, the CPU key.txt, right click, cut these out, and somewhere on your computer, you can make a backup folder, call it whatever you want to, but inside of your backup folder, you can right click and paste these two files right here. And once they've been pasted out, even if you want to, you can go one step further, right click it, go to 7-zip, and create an archive of this here. That way it will be compressed, it will just be one file, and the nice thing is once you back this up somewhere safe and accessible, like use a cloud storage or something along those lines, this is going to be good because in case anything ever goes wrong with your system, you could always refer back to this and be able to flash it and try and revive your system that way. It does require a hardware flasher, but we still have this NAND backup. So now that that's all done, we can come over here, right click, eject our USB drive, and take it back over to the console. So now if you want to launch any additional homebrew, again, it would be best to log into that burner account or this bad update account we made here. And again, for any homebrew launching, you need to go to Games, you need to go over to XEX menu, and then once XEX menu has been loaded up, tap the RB button to bring up your USB drive, and you can go to the USB, and you can go into the apps folder here, and just checking these out. For example, I'll run one which has been requested and I've shown it a few times, which is dash launch here. So it does work. However, it's not going to work to the fullest extent just because we are not on a hard modded system. There's still limitations. But if you go into the installer folder, go into default XEX, this is going to be important, right? You can launch it here technically, but if it asks you to install it, do not install dash launch. I'm telling you right now, this is a really easy way to brick your system. So you can navigate over to cancel, hit A on here, and you can see that it is running here. Unfortunately, there's not too much you can do since it is not installed. So for anybody who's wondering if they can launch things such as plugins, not yet at this point. I'm not saying you won't be able to do it, but you just cannot do it at this time. But if you tap the RB button, You can come over here and tap it yet again. You can come over here, go down to System Info, and you can check this out. You can see your console sensitive information, including the CPU key. Now, this time the only key that is not showing up is the DVD key. However, if you do want to obtain that, you can obtain it thanks to having your CPU key and your NAND, and you can use something such as JRunner with extras in order to pull the files that are needed from your NAND. However, we're going to go ahead and exit out of here, so I'm just going to go down to Quit, hit A on there, and just like before, if we want to launch any other homebrew, you need to go to Games, My Games, and XEX menu. Now let's go ahead and launch something else here. We can go into our apps, we can check out SNES 360 for example, which I have shown before, but we can go here, you can see I already modified it at one point, and this here is the modified executable, so if we give this a launch, it will take a few seconds here, but it comes up, it gives us this achievement, which is Unlocked Homebrew, which is always great to see. However, this is also why I recommended having that burner offline account on here, so none of this touches an account that you care about. For this, I'm going to use this as the save point here, but you can see here at this point it is running and it is working, and if you do want to play some of your favorite Super Nintendo games, you're able to do that. I'm going to exit out of SNES 360 yet again, and just like before, it always brings us to the dashboard in which you can go to Games, launch XEX menu. Then from here, I do have one last one to show you, which I have run on this system before, but this here is Aurora. Now this here was asked about several times because this is one of the quintessential applications to having something such as a hard modded system like a JTAG or a RGH. One of the really nice benefits of having one is that you're able to run a custom dashboard in which you are able to add your content on here, navigate through it. It looks like a nice cover flow. Although this one doesn't look as nice, you're seeing that there's nothing on here because I have not connected my system to my network, so it's not able to download those covers. But you could see here within this, if you hit the back button, you can go to the file manager and you are able to navigate through your drives on here. So if you want to move files to and from, you're able to do that and manage it pretty well. If you do want to add paths, you can hit the start button, you can go down to content, and from here you could add content. You could go to change if you want to add something in, go to hard drive 1 for example, go to content within here. Now highlight the folder which is all zeros. You can tap the Y button on this and you can change the depth to 2, hit save, and from here, I mean I already did this at one point while it's USB and content, but if you hit scan now, I'm going to hit OK, exit out of here, and you can see it's populating quite a bit because there is some other content on this drive. Now there's a few games and there's mainly media streaming apps on here, however you are able to add them in, and you could do the same thing with your USB drive as well too. The only thing is right now at this point, if you are trying to launch game backups, there have been limitations on this unfortunately. Like if you have a disk-based backup which has been extracted out, even if you try to patch it, I have not had access running those. However, in terms of launching actual homebrews such as this, it has worked out pretty well. Another downside to running Aurora in this environment, unfortunately, is that at least this early on, the Nova plugin has not been loaded up. So typically on a hard modded system, if you bring this up here, you could see the temperature on everything on here, and it does allow for some other access and some other functionality. But since that's not loaded in, we're going to be more limited using bad update as opposed to something such as a full RGH install. But once you're done messing around with and navigating through Aurora, just like before, we can bring up the guide, go ahead, go to home, and once we're back at the dashboard, you can see, well, we are in a familiar spot. And just like any other time, I've run through all my homebrew, but if there's anything else you'd like to check out, you can always just again go into Games, My Games, and always run XEX menu. And from there, you should be able to run, hopefully, some of the content that you're trying to run. Now, here's a bit of added functionality I talked about in a previous video and I hinted at in this video, and since we're getting close to the end, I'll go ahead and let you in on a little secret here. For this part of the video, after I end up loading up the exploit, I have not been using an Xbox 360 controller. I'm actually using a PS5 DualSense controller here, thanks to the functionality of that being applied to free my Xenon. It's quite similar to a plugin or patch also made by Invoxy Play Games known as USBD Sec Patch, which allows you to hook up controllers to your system using an adapter, such as what I'm doing is using a Mayflash Magic NS Lite adapter, and I'm wirelessly connecting my DualSense to it. I have a video covering this, and if you want to, you can check it out and see how it works there. The only difference is going to be you do not need a plugin, you do not need to flash a patch, you just need to have a compatible controller and an adapter that can get you into X input mode, and once free my Xenon has successfully run, well, you can navigate just like I am right here with another type of controller. Again, this is a wireless DualSense controller and it's working out pretty well. Open the drive, close it, there we go. We're not really needing the drive right now since we're not using Tony Hawk. Either way, that is about it for this video here. Now, as some parting words here, is this going to be as good as having a JTAG or a RGH? No. In fact, even the developer behind this has said in his part 2 of the write-up covering everything, should I use this instead of the RGH hack? No. This exploit does not provide a good user experience for those wanting to hack their Xbox 360 consoles. RGH is and always will be the de facto boot to hacked state exploit for the system. So for anybody who's watching this or who's following this and is wondering if they should get rid of their RGH, not do one, whatever it is, well, no, RGH is still going to be king in regard to getting a system and getting it into a modified state. While as being able to utilize bad update is impressive, and now even more impressive thanks to being able to use a game trial, so all we need is a USB drive, there is still going to be limitations. I have no doubt that this is going to mature as a platform, so to speak. Unfortunately, you are not going to get to the full level of access that you would with a hard modded system. So if you're wanting that level of full access, the best option is still going to be RGH at the end of the day. However, I do want to give a few shout outs and thank yous over to, first of all, Grim Doomer for not only developing this, but also releasing Bad Update. It's a great update, I would say, but I understand the meme behind the name. Bad Update is great. We also no longer require access to the Tony Hawk's American Wasteland disc, so this is not only great for people who cannot find the game, but also people who might have a broken disk drive, and it limits everything to just staying on one USB drive, which is fantastic. So again, another big shout out and thank you to I Hate Compver, as well as Invoxy Play Games for being able to bring us and release a nicer and more accessible entry point. Either way, that is it for this video here. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope it helped out, and if it did, a like would absolutely be appreciated. If you didn't like it because maybe you don't want to wait like 45 minutes to get into this modified state such as me, you can dislike it. That's totally fine as well too. And maybe look into performing RGH. I'm actually probably going to link those down below in the description if you're wanting to follow a guide on how to hard mod your system. Either way, that is about it for this video here. This is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for watching, everyone.